Hello, everybody. This is Lady Boulay, and welcome back to Black American Lineage. I cannot thank you enough for the support you've given this channel. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you for your feedback. Today, as we journey back to our past, there is a saying, the half has never been told. And what it is talking about is the experience of African people who became slaves in the United States. What it means is half of their story has never been told. The narrative is that we were enslaved, we were just a bunch of dumb slaves and lazy. Now, that's an oxymoron. You can't be lazy and a slave in the United States. That was the whole purpose of having slavery, was to do the work. So that's an oxymoron. An oxymoron is two things that cannot happen at the same time. As in bittersweet. Those are contradictory terms. Something can't be bitter and sweet at the same time. So I'm calling lazy slave an oxymoron, because you can't be a slave and lazy. The whole meaning of slave is to work. And black people worked resourcefully and brilliantly for a long time, and that is what built this American empire. Now, the reason I'm saying this is clearing up the lie that black people were or were ever lazy in America. And I'm not talking about these modern times where some black people are indulging their children and not teaching them the work ethic that they need. I'm talking about when having to work or not work was not an option. But today I'm talking about how land was stolen from black Americans. And I'm starting this out by saying they were smart and worked hard during slavery. And when slavery ended, they hit the ground running, working, buying land, building homes, building churches, building communities. They were very, very resourceful. But the enemies of our people were working really, really hard to make sure they didn't really accomplish anything. That every time we made progress, something happened. A town was burned down. Somebody was lynched. A law was passed that usually had something to do with you having to read or write or produce a birth certificate, to buy land, to open a business, to get a patent. So if you couldn't read, write, produce a birth certificate, or compute, then you were denied. And let us remember that it was against the law for the enslaved people to learn how to read and write. But as soon as slavery ended and they started trying to become independent, then they threw this, you got to know how to read. You got to know how to fill out this form. You got to know how to do this. Things that it had been against the law for them to do during their enslavement. Those were roadblocks that were thrown up intentionally to keep black people from progressing. Now, these two words on the screen, eminent domain, have been two of the worst words ever muttered in black America. The law of eminent domain is one of the laws that has been used to take land away from black people. So let's see what eminent domain says. Eminent domain means that the government can take your private property for public use. It says they must pay fair market value. Now, they determine what the fair market value is. You don't make that determination. So they give an example. Grandma lives on 20 acres in the center of any town, USA. The government of any town decides that they would like to put a park where Granny's house is. They can do it. In the case of black people, they have taken land to put highways, schools, hospitals, shopping malls, housing projects, anything that they want to bring to a town that they can say is for the public's use. They can take your land, and they always survey to see where the black people's land is. And where your land is, that's where they want to put that hospital. That has happened to black people all over this country, not just in California with Bruce's Beach. It's been a land grab, an effort to take land away from black people ever since black people started buying land right after slavery. At the peak in 1910, African American farmers made up around 14% of all U.S. farmers, owning 16 to 19 million acres of land. By 2012, black Americans represented just 1.6% of the farming community, owning 3.6 million acres of land. So black people went from owning 19 million acres of land in 1910, which was only 75 years after slavery ended. 75 years after slavery ended, black people owned 19 million acres of land in the United States. And by 2012, that was down to 3.6 million acres of land. Now let's be clear. Black people did not give that land away, and they didn't sell it. It was swindled, it was stolen, it was just taken away from them. Another study shows a 98% decline in black farmers between 1920 and 1997. This contrasts sharply with an increase in acres owned by white farmers over the same period. So, that tells you right there. Black people's land ownership decreased and white people's land ownership increased. So what happened? In a 1998 report, the United States Department of Agriculture ascribed this decrease in land by black people to a long and well-documented history of what? Discrimination against black farmers. And these practices date from the 1930s to the 1950s. Black farmers were excluded from loan resources that were put there for farmers. But the banks would not loan the black farmers money. They loaned money to the white farmers because, of course, they wanted the white farmers to succeed, but they did not want the black farmers to succeed. We have to keep that before us. They did not want them to succeed. They want to continue the narrative that we don't know how to do anything. We need them, when in fact, they wanted black people to continue the sharecropping system, which was nothing more than another word for slavery. So the banks would not let them have the money. The Department of Agriculture knew those banks were discriminating against those black farmers, and they wouldn't do anything about it. Remember, in the sharecropping days, the black families and the white families were supposed to be sharing the profits. The white people were going to supply the land, and black people were going to supply the labor, and they were going to split the proceeds 50-50. The white people put up this little company store. Black people had to trade at the store, and black people always owed them something at the end of the season. So black people never profited. They could never make anything out of it. So they had to stop sharecropping and go into some other form of work. Or if they had their own land, it was the same problem, because the banks would not let them have the startup money that they needed to get their crops going every year. And this is the reason that black farmers keep filing class action suits against the Department of Agriculture. And in 2011, the Department of Agriculture settled with black farmers for $1.2 billion. At the time, President Obama said, "It brings us closer to the ideals of freedom and equality." President Barack Obama called a judge's approval of the $1.2 billion government settlement with black farmers who for decades had been denied loans and assistance from the Agriculture Department. He called it a step forward in addressing an unfortunate chapter in USDA's civil rights history. Well, yeah, all of it was unfortunate. This was just another drop in the bucket to all of the other violations against black people, including black farmers and black landowners. This is the second round of settlements in a case filed in 1997, which alleged that thousands of black farmers had been discriminated against between 1983 and 1997. This round is directed at farmers who were not awarded payment because of missed filing deadlines. The judge said payments would likely be dispersed in a year or so after neutral parties reviewed the individual claims. So the black farmers got money back in 1997, in 2011, and they're getting another round of it this year in 2023. I guess they've already gotten it, and they deserve it. They deserve it because it was cold, hard discrimination, and black people are also going back and filing claims to get their land back, and that's happening too because land was stolen from black people with the government's assistance. This is why people who are concerned and who know about this history get upset when black people make a few dollars and they run and give it back to the people who have been robbing you from the beginning. You really don't even have to give it to them. They'll find a way to take it. Your objective when you get your hands on some money is to try to protect that money so that that money can be passed on to the next generation, so the next generation doesn't have to begin from scratch. Every generation of black people has to start from scratch. We are just now getting to the point where we have money to pass down to the next generation. And sadly, that money is really not coming from the black people who make the most money in the United States. That money that's being passed down now to the next generation is from black people who worked 2 jobs or had a small business and worked that business and educated their children and had a little something to pass down to them so they don't have to start from scratch. It's not coming from these so-called black millionaires and billionaires because they're giving their money back to the people that took from you in the first place. So that's how come it's so infuriating to some of us when black people act like they don't have good sense and they don't know the history well enough and don't care enough about their people, it seems, to try to protect what they have so that we can build some wealth so that every generation doesn't have to start out doing everything on their own. That's all I got to say about that. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the channel and give me a comment if you will. And as always, have a great day.